It's very important to us that we get the pedagogy right, that we produce materials that you can use. That's why we're listening so hard to all of you. That's why we are trying to make this so user-friendly.
Of course, part of the goal here is to make sure that we deliver on standard learning technologies and learning approaches which have been tested over time to work. So we know, for example, that having a chapter start with learning objectives works for instructors and students. We know that having concepts and terms defined along the margin works for instructors and students. End of chapter review questions, standard in textbooks and are well liked. We are working very hard to have the simplest, most transparent, most effective graphs. Econ textbooks will have graphs. It is important to make them as simple as possible. There is, of course, a test bank which will accompany the textbook. There is, of course, an instructor's manual which accompany the textbook. There is a companion website which will accompany the textbook and allow students and instructors to use their instructor or student support systems on the web. So we've put together a lot of standard parts of the package, but very interested in whether we've missed anything. We've spent a lot of time, though, thinking about what our chapter might look like distinctively. And one of the things we've come up with is a concept of practical puzzles. So why don't I ask Bob to talk a bit about that?
Well, the point there is that students very often learn, in our experience, by being challenged to think hard about some issue or puzzle that they are familiar with. Why is it that the cost of certain technologies, for example, iPods, keeps on going down? Why is it that certain other things that they'd like to have in a global economy are more and more expensive, particularly if they are dependent on raw commodities? Whatever the issue is, we start the chapters with questions that force them to think it through and force them to begin to try to come up with answers. It's almost a teaser. It's a way of getting them and pulling them into the text. And we have found in our own classrooms that that's a great way of just getting the students involved.
And the teasers, basically, we are coming from essentially news items, and we try to choose things that are really of relevance to the students directly. So it might be a product that they are likely to buy or consider buying, or a change in policy that might affect them. So the practical puzzles, there would be 3 at the beginning, and one of the teaser elements of this is to try to get students to see what might be similar across the 3. So they're taken from different product spheres, for example, and what's similar, what does the student need to know? And we hope that will encourage them to figure out through the chapter where the application is. And indeed, in the chapter, we would keep bringing back those puzzles as we help the students solve them. So following upon the practical puzzles, which is the beginning of each chapter, and the learning objectives, through the chapter we're going to refer back to the learning objectives on a regular basis. We'll refer back to the puzzles on a regular basis, but we will also have some additional pedagogical learning features included. We have a feature called Review It, so that after a series of concepts we actually have a review box which reminds students this is what they have learned. We have a Do It, and this is a very important feature in the sense that we will take a problem, the kind of problem a student might have in a homework or might have on a test, and we will walk them through step by step the solution. So the Do It is do it with our help. And that's a very important part of the pedagogy. And then finally, in those few chapters, and really this will depend, will not be in every chapter, where students are really asked to do a calculation, so a calculation of an elasticity or a calculation of GDP, something like that. We will have a box called Compute It or Calculate It. So Review It, Do It, Calculate or Compute It are various parts of each chapter to help students learn. Then at the end of the chapter we have something very distinctive which we call You Be the Judge.
We are trying to create, in other words, an active, interactive learning environment where students are learning because they're doing puzzles. They're learning because they're finding answers using inductive reasoning.
And with the You Be the Judge, we would also have icon which would direct you to certain websites, an icon which would direct you to certain video clips. So for example, in one of the chapters you're seeing, which is the chapter on elasticity, the You Be the Judge is very current today, and that is really if the goal is to reduce driving, think about, you be the judge as a student. You think a gas tax increase is an efficient way to do that? Would that actually reduce driving, and by how much? Well, clearly that's going to get you back to the elasticity of demand. But how would the public respond to a significant increase in the price of gas? What about instead if you made bicycles free? Or what about instead if you limited people's driving rights to every other day, something which some other societies have chosen to do? So in this case, we're giving students, here's what the goal is of public policy, that is to reduce driving. Here are various mechanisms for doing that. You be the judge in terms of choosing which mechanism might be most effective.